Gen 8 may have split fans apart in more ways than I ever expected, but I hope we can all agree they outdid themselves with the set of creatures introduced. Each region supplies me with a new batch of favorites, but this time it really felt like I was choosing which child I liked more. Not to mention, as of this writing, more Pokemon are on the way via DLC, so who knows if this list will be definitive. It probably won't, but for right now, this is what we're going with. So now, without further ado, I give you my top 10 Generation 8 Pokemon. Enjoy, everybody! If you saw my list of the top 10 scrapped Pokemon, you may remember when I learned Farfetch'd had an evolution left on the cutting room floor back in Gen 2. It's gotten some buffs in the years since, but they haven't amounted to much. In Ultra Moon, I spent way too much time on the GTS trying to find one to chain breed first impression on before I said, what is even the point? But looking back, Game Freak knew he was destined for greatness, so they gave it a bit of a head start. I didn't even know about Galarian Farfetch'd going into these games, and my brother ended up evolving his on a complete whim. Looking it up later, I thought for sure trying to get 3 crits in a battle would drive me insane, but honestly, it was pretty fun. When my brother finally gave me a Farfetch'd, it was at level 4 and no leak to speak of. Took me like 10 tries to pull it off with focus energy on a rookie D, but I did it. Now with Surfetch'd in our midst, all is right with the world, but if you like Farfetch'd just the way it is, that's cool too, because all of this only applies to the Galarian variant, which I almost forgot. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Cramorant had much more to it than met the eye. When Hop first sent it out in battle, I had no idea what I was in for. Oh yeah, I knew about the whole thing with Aerocuda, but I thought that was it. Then I see a Pikachu in its mouth. Then after KOing it, it spits the poor thing out at me, then I get paralyzed. I couldn't even be mad, I was just amazed at what happened, and it was then Cramorant made my personal list. The jokes with this thing even transcend the language barrier. Its Japanese name, for instance, is a combination of a choking sound and the Japanese word for cormorant, making the beautifully simple ooh-ooh. There's a part of me that's hoping when it shows up in the anime, it just goes ooh. Speaking of which, my love for this thing was solidified when the trailer for the 23rd Pokemon movie dropped, and I saw Team Rocket with a Cramorant and audibly went, yeah! I nicknamed mine Gullet, and my Corviknight and Barraskewda, they had to move over to make room for him. Try and find me someone who wasn't surprised by Applin first time seeing it. I thought this would be Gen 8's Magikarp or Pseudo-Legendary and figured it'd take some time to evolve. When I got to Hammerlock, there was that guy who asked for an Applin and I passed him off thinking he might take it from me for good. More time passed, I raised it up to level 30 something and said, I'm doing something wrong. It wasn't until my brother got a Flapple and said, go see that guy in Hammerlock, see what happens. And when it evolved, I thought, oh, that is totally not what I expected, but I still felt like I lucked out. Apple-based desserts can be considered my one true weakness, and I'll fully admit this thing looks really tasty. I also thought it was gonna be a big huggable dragon, but it's no bigger than a Pikachu. Still, I'll let it slide as it's just a wonderful little design. I especially love how its eyes are on its ears. Even though my starter filled the grass-type quota, I wanted to use Appleton too, so if they weren't both on my team, I'd swap them out from time to time. So good on you, Appleton, you made me break my long-standing tradition of always having my starter in the party. Mine's nicknamed App Dragon. I had some mixed feelings seeing Toxel the first time. Getting it from the daycare, I thought it was a special Pokemon of which there'd only be one in the game. But it was a baby with a crummy moveset, so I worried it'd be a while before I saw some kind of payoff. I hoped whatever it took to evolve, it wouldn't be super gimmicky, but luckily the gimmick came after the evolution. I had to see both forms of Toxtricity to make an informed decision, and while Amped is more striking, I went low-key for my main team. Not only does Toxtricity have a typing all its own, but its design falls in the camp of ambiguous monster, one of my favorites. It's got elements of lizards and salamanders mixed with a punk rock persona. I love how it shows signs of rebellion as a baby, then goes full on punk in every sense of the word. Doesn't matter what path it goes down in life, it's gonna have some kind of problem with everything and everyone around it. I nicknamed mine Machado, and you know what? That's probably one of my favorite nicknames I've ever given to a Pokemon. I've gotta be one of the few people in the world who doesn't hate Mr. Mime. I'd go so far as to say I'm quite fond of it. My first hint of it getting some Galar love was when someone in Spikemuth referred to one with the term Cantonian, and that raised an eyebrow. Bumping into Galarian Mr. Mime, I was pretty stoked, and at the time, that would have been enough. However, after adding it to my team, leveling it up a bit, and seeing it evolve, time pretty much stopped for me. I didn't know about Rime Frost, even though I've likely seen it before, but I've never used the term before seeing Mr. Rime. What a strike of luck with that naming scheme there. And I don't think I have to say it, but I love how it's a dead ringer for Charlie Chaplin, one of the most iconic actors from the era of silent film who was born in the UK. Man, this is just too good. In my experience, my Mr. Rime usually ended up getting KO'd in like 1 or 2 hits, but I like it too much to care about its flaws. I named mine Dr. Indigo, and if you get that reference, I applaud you. Of all the Pokemon to get regional variants, Meowth was the last on my radar. It already got one last gen and had a Gigantamax form this gen, but it's good to see it finally getting the attention it deserves. I love the backstories they give to new forms, and Meowth got one that's as metal as the very type it took on. Who would have ever thought this little fella would be the basis for our first Pokemon based on a Viking? After I caught one, I wondered what a Galarian Persian would look like, blissfully unaware of what awaited me. That's when my Wycom showed my brother evolved his Meowth the night before, and the next time we battled, I was introduced to Berserker. So many things were going through my head, but the one thing they all had in common was joy. I did get a little deflated when I learned there was nothing past Berserker at first, but that didn't last long. Plus, it keeps a lot of the appeal regular Meowth loses after evolving, while still looking positively fierce. I nicknamed mine Cathcart, which perfectly fits this gruff little brute. Believe it or not, I had some trouble deciding what member of this line I was gonna place here, so in the end, I just put the whole family here as one entry. Impidimp was such a mystery when I caught wind of it. It showed up in E3 footage and a live stream or two, but wasn't officially recognized before the games came out, and I thought, what's his deal? If that was intentional, I say it worked because he definitely grew on me. I got mine through the Maractus trade in Stow-on side, and it wasn't long before he evolved into Morgrem. I love this thing's color scheme. It's my favorite shade of pink and red with that striking green. At this point, I had no inkling of what would come next. My brother showed off Grimmsnarl in one of our mid-journey battles, and like I've said before, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I love how with this line, Pokemon covers the more devious and sinister side to fairies and other mythical creatures. And when I saw Grimmsnarl, it immediately reminded me of something out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Mine came with the predetermined nickname Peepers, and I can see myself naming it that. I made a solemn oath that I wouldn't have any Pokemon spoiled for me this gen, and I especially wanted to see the starters' evolutions for myself. I may have gone down the water type road the last 2 gens, but grass types are my bread and butter. And though some are getting sick of primates, I can't get enough of them, so Grookey was a natural fit for me. Thwackey was a bit of a shock, but I thought, middle evolutions can be a bit awkward, and got used to him with time. Seeing it go from monkey to full-on gorilla, it's pretty much everything I hoped for. I nicknamed my Grookey Nagasako as a reference to Donkey Kong's current voice actor Takashi Nagasako, who debuted in the bongo-based Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. I figured, hey, monkey that drums, that's clever. So to see Rillaboom was pretty much just that iteration of DK, I was over the moon. They went all in with the drummer motif, even going so far as to give him super long hair. And given all the musical references in Gen 8's roster, I hoped someone would take Rillaboom, both Toxtricity forms and Obstagoon, and make some kinda killer rock band fan art. To my surprise, the game itself had me covered by the time the credits rolled, and love or hate these games, that is just awesome. When I tried to pin down the best Galarian ghost, things got tough once again. I want to give a brief mention to Cursula for scaring the living crap out of me, but Runerigus edges out by just a smidgen. Yamask and Cofagrigus have always been standouts to me, and as time passes, I like them more and more. Adding a Galarian Yamask to my team made perfect sense, and I knew anything was possible after seeing Berserker, so it stayed in the party for a bit. After hitting level 40, I looked for the answer online, but I blurred my eyes skimming any images and I had zero context for the evolution, so I wasn't upset seeing its name. Even with that, seeing it evolve into Runerigus was one of the biggest surprises I've had in a Pokemon game ever. One of the best parts about Pokemon designs is when they inspire me to learn more about their origins, and most of the time I learn something completely new. Just by doing a quick search on runestones, I want to learn so much more about them, and I'm sure there's a history buff out there who loves Cofagrigus, and when they saw this, they freaked out harder than I did. Just talking about it, I'm getting tingles all over again. This ensemble right here, this is one of the greats. I had no clue what to make of Phalanx when I made my way through the ruins of Galar. Seeing it walk around like a Wiggler from Mario and later getting hit by the almighty first impression, all signs pointed to bug type. My brother thought the exact same thing when I showed it off to him, and I'm sure everyone else thought it too. It's so cool how it's a fighting type yet looks nothing like what you'd expect when you think of that type. It's got nothing immediate, no belt, no gloves, but what it does have is the drive to fight to the very end. Speaking of which, its signature move, No Retreat, is a serious contender for coolest animations in the whole game. Combining Roman war history with the execute concept and making something that looks right out of Kirby, it's impossible to pass this thing up. Though a late addition to the party, I like to think it was the backbone of the whole team. Collectively, they're known as Hip Hop, and currently stand firm as my favorite Gen 8 Pokemon. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed what you saw, feel free to give this video a like, share with a friend, subscribe, check out all my social media pages, blah blah blah, all that good stuff that I always go on about. And be sure to tell me what some of your favorite Galar Pokemon were in the comments below. And with all that said, I'll see you all next time for another installment in this month of Pokemon. Catch you later!